At the heart of Europe lies Switzerland. It's a surprisingly big little country. Small in area, but big on natural beauty. And like its many languages and cultures, its landscapes vary widely too. From mighty Alps and dense forests to mysterious moors and roaring waterfalls. Switzerland has many faces, some familiar, some hidden. It's a country that's astonishingly rich in variety, wilderness, and scenic wonder. On the southern side of the Alps, just 3.5 hours drive from Bâle, lies Ticino, the Swiss enclave on the border with Italy. Switzerland's southernmost canton stretches from the main Alpine ridge down to the Po Valley in the north of Italy. Ticino is home to all the country's vegetation zones, making it a canton of tremendous contrasts. From palm trees to glaciers, the span of shapes and colors could hardly be wider. Like a mighty wall, the Alps hold back the cold from the north. As a result, the climate to the south is almost Mediterranean. While other parts of Ticino are still covered by a thick blanket of snow, around Lake Maggiore, spring is already in full swing. It's a season for all the senses. Blossoms are out in a dizzying array of colors, and numerous species of camellia perfume the air with their bewitching scent. The magnolias are also in full bloom. They are among the world's oldest plants, living fossils that have flowered since the Cretaceous period. Although they have no nectar, they do have nourishing pollen, a sweet temptation for bees that harvest it diligently among the labyrinth of pistils. Lake Maggiore. Only 1/5 of the lake belongs to Switzerland. The rest lies in Italy. What Ticino has in common with Switzerland is federal law, the Swiss franc, and price levels. Everything else is Italian: language, food, culture, and temperament. Over the past few decades, proximity to La Dolce Vita and a Mediterranean climate have attracted money to the once extremely poor canton. Today, lavish villas bear witness to the wealth that has migrated to the tourist centers of Ascona and Locarno. The rule is, the closer to the water, the more exclusive the location. Not everyone can afford direct access to the water. If you happen to be human, that is. But just a stone's throw from the lavish luxury and splendor, unspoiled nature awaits, the Bolle di Magadino, a large conservation area. Here, the Ticino and Versasca rivers flow into Lake Maggiore. The marshlands are an important habitat for animals. The combination of water and land is ideal for amphibians and reptiles. The harmless dice snake swims and hunts in the water, pausing occasionally to warm up in the sun. They like sunny spots too, the river cooter. These exotic creatures ended up here involuntarily, freed illegally into the wild. They're now driving out the native pond terrapins. The Bolle di Magadino is above all a paradise for birds. Migratory birds as well as permanent residents, such as the goosander and the great crested grebe. Around 300 different species have been sighted here. The swamplands are especially busy in the mating season. Turf wars and nest building are the order of the day. The great crested grebes are constructing their floating nests. Many of these are anchored in the water, others are attached to tree trunks. Nest building is teamwork. During the breeding season, grebes are monogamous and the couples work together hand in hand, or beak to beak. The foundation is made of branches, and algae and leaves provide comfortable padding for the eggs. But offspring doesn't happen on its own. Among the mallard ducks, mating is already in full swing. As is often the case in the animal world, things can get a bit rough. Some ducks have actually drowned while copulating, but fortunately, not this time. The grebes are a little more elegant, starting with the courtship. This follows an elaborately choreographed ritual. The head shaking and plumage pecking are just the overture. First, they have to establish that they really harmonize. In the second act, there's the handing over of the bridal gifts. If this is accepted, they can finally start to dance. If the courtship has an appropriately successful outcome, the act itself is similarly civilized. The nest serves as a comfortable mating platform. As evening approaches, calm descends on the Bolle di Magadino once again. A calm in which the presence of human beings can almost be forgotten. But at night, with lights reflecting in Lake Maggiore, it's clear how densely populated it is. Lugano has only 16,000 inhabitants, but in high season, this can rise to 4 times as many. The shore is dotted with countless hotels. Lake Maggiore has been a popular tourist destination for decades. Sun-drenched promenades along the lake shore, the cafes, and the picturesque narrow streets invite visitors to stroll and linger. Culture, beach, and mountains, an ideal vacation spot for everyone and for the whole family. It's an angle used by travel companies to attract custom and has made tourism one of Ticino's main industries. Geographically speaking, Lake Maggiore marks the most low-lying and nearly southernmost point of Switzerland. In the middle of the lake lies a floating paradise, the Brissago Islands. The surrounding water stores the sun's warmth and releases it in winter, resulting in predominantly subtropical conditions almost year-round. The large botanical gardens on the main island uses this to full advantage. And the observant might even catch a glimpse of some fauna among the flora. A sea of blossoms provided by the rhododendrons is this lizard's hunting grounds. It can only spot its prey once it moves. But once in the hunter's sights, there's no escape for the victim. And the lizard enjoys its own version of la Dolce Vita. It's hard to imagine today, but at the beginning of the last century, Ticino was regularly gripped by famine. Being so isolated meant that industrialization and tourism simply never reached it. The barren soil made it mostly unsuitable for agriculture. The valleys in the hinterland were especially severely poverty-stricken. Ticino's real treasure has always lain in the beauty of its landscape. Just 50 kilometers away from Locarno, the Maggia Valley is a fine example. The Maggia drains most of the Ticino Alps. On its way to Lake Maggiore, it transports huge volumes of water as well as gravel and sand. Natural sandpaper that accentuates the individual patterns, grooves and ridges of the rocks. The Maggia Valley is the largest meadow landscape in Ticino. Wide gravel banks and floodplain forests create a rich biotope. All 4 types of lizard native to Switzerland are found here in Ticino. The most common is the wall lizard, which is a past master at camouflage. The iridescent emerald lizard is far more striking. It's the largest indigenous lizard and is especially happy in the warmth of Ticino. Like all reptiles, lizards cannot regulate their own body temperature. They need to keep warming themselves up in the sun. Warm stone is a favorite for this, and there are plenty of them near the river. Insects breed on the water too, so there's food in abundance. Something that attracts the wagtail as well. It's an exceptional aerial acrobat. No insect is safe with the wagtail around, and it needs a lot of them, as its hungry young are waiting back at the nest. This young wagtail's plumage is still brown. It's already fledged, but still has to learn the right hunting techniques. The adult birds demonstrate how to do it, especially how one can never stuff one's beak too full. On hot days, the turquoise waters tempt many people to take a cool dip, but it's not without its risks. After heavy rains, the water level can rise quickly, turning the Maggia into a torrential river. It's a danger that's often underestimated, costing several unsuspecting bathers their lives. But luckily, the water's elemental power is generally demonstrated in other ways. Over millennia, the river has ground and polished the rocks along its course. This decorative Maggia gneiss is also quarried, ending up decorating terraces and floors around the world. Heading north, the further away from Lake Maggiore, the harsher and more isolated the terrain. Many inhabitants were driven away from this rugged region. In the 19th century, whole villages left here and headed for America. But decades later, many of these emigrants returned with their newly accumulated wealth, making a tremendous contribution to the economic development of Ticino. Nature didn't miss the presence of human beings. A primeval forest flourished untamed in the mountains. Wild lilies thrive especially well in the damp earth under shady trees. One sound is typical of Ticino, the gushing of waterfalls. Some only occur in spring when the snow melts. Others can be admired year-round. The Foroglio waterfall at Val Bavona, for instance, that cascades over 100 meters in free fall down the rock face. The eponymous village of Foroglio is made up of traditional Ticino rusticos, simple stone buildings. It's one of 12 little hamlets in the Val Bavona, a valley only inhabited in summer. As early as the 15th century, the last farmers vacated the land. To this day, they only return in the warm summer months to put their cattle to pasture. Only one of the villages has electricity. The others use gas, petroleum and solar panels when necessary. But there's enough energy for everyone's needs. Half the electricity used in Switzerland is supplied by hydroelectric power. Lago Ritom, originally a glacial lake, was turned into a reservoir especially for this purpose 100 years ago. Countless streams carry the water down from the mountains, ensuring the lake is kept filled. Lago Ritom is one of 28 mountain lakes on the Val Piora, the largest high plateau in Ticino. Over 2,000 meters above sea level, it's home to a unique variety of almost all alpine plant species. A sea of flowers, from the white St. Bruno's lily to the Alpine anemone. Especially in summer, the fields are a colorful, nutritious paradise for insects and butterflies. Ants are also fond of the plant's sweet calyxes. They gather nectar from the ovaries of gentians, helping to pollinate them as they do so. The common house leek, or hens and chicks, is often found in front gardens. It's undemanding and easy to grow. A Roman superstition held that it protected buildings against lightning strikes. No superstition, but an unusual natural phenomenon has drawn scientists from all over the world to the Piora Valley. In their idyllically located research center, they're studying samples from Lake Cadagno, which features a peculiarity that's almost unique worldwide. It has two extreme layers of water that never mix. The upper layer of water is oxygenated and filled with life, but the depths of the lake are a dead zone consisting of sulfur. Examination of various microorganisms from the lake have already shed light on how crude oil is formed under the planet's oceans. A great finding from a small lake. The Piora Valley's wonderfully diverse vegetation has also been the subject of research and documentation for centuries. The earliest records originate from the 17th century. Scientific theory doesn't interest the plateau's animal population, however. All they're concerned with is practical issues. The high nutritional value of the mountain plants is a perfect basic diet for marmots. They spend most of their time eating, and they're in a hurry. They only have the brief alpine summer months to put on the fat reserves they need to see them through the winter. They don't venture more than 100 meters from their burrows. Their aerial enemies are especially dangerous. But not this rare rufous-tailed rock thrush that breeds in rocky crevices. This female wheatear has been hunting for its brood. Wheatears build their nests under stone and gravel heaps in meadows. So they're the marmot's friendly neighbors. One of the reasons behind the wide variety of species in the Piora Valley is its specific geological setting. Crystalline and calcareous rock alternate with each other, providing ideal fertile ground for plants, which in turn offers food and protection for animals. Close to the timberline of the mountain forests, Swiss stone pines, larch and spruce trees thrive happily next to each other. On the other side of the valley, the first peaks of the Ticino Alps can be seen towering into the sky. Up here, it's still like the Ice Age in spring. At almost 3,000 meters, temperatures stay below freezing for a long time. But even in this seemingly perpetual winter, the power of the sun melts the mighty alpine snow masses, replenishing the waterfalls, streams, and glacial lakes. While the lemon trees are blossoming in the south of Ticino, up here the season has just begun for the alpine snowbell, the first to spring up out of snow-free patches of ground. The alpine primrose has its own padded nest that protects it from the cold and supplies it with moisture. Only plants that are masters of adaptation can grow here, like the gentian or the alpine anemone. The Alps are the centerpiece and true heart of Switzerland. From the passes of the Gotthard Massif, their peaks are revealed in all their glory.
Guarda per monti e per valli, sfugge il raggio raggio del sol. Guarda sui pascoli cresce, presto l'ombra del buio, il sol s'avvicina al monte, oh, com son rossi ghiacciai, oh, com son rossi ghiacciai.
The rugged mountain terrain is perfect for ibexes. This goat is licking salt from the rocks. Like many herbivores, ibexes need an additional source of minerals to grow and flourish. Whoever believes they're alone in an isolated mountain world is wrong. This is where the Gotthard Pass runs, the main gateway to Ticino. For centuries, crossing the Alps was an exhausting business. It took around 50 hours to get from Bâle to Ticino by stagecoach. But with the construction of the railway tunnel, a link was finally created to the rest of the country and the modern era. And today, the new Gotthard base tunnel ensures an even faster journey to the south. The old Gotthard Pass, the Tremola, is today a heritage site and still a favorite among tourists who, rather than reaching their destination as quickly as possible, prefer to enjoy the view. The Gotthard Massif provides a barrier against the cold northern air, but the rain clouds from the south discharge their moisture before crossing over the Alps. This makes Ticino one of Switzerland's wettest cantons. It rains twice as much here as in Zurich. Marmots don't let a bit of bad weather interfere with their chief preoccupation, though. They ingest their fluid requirements at the same time as their food, which means they don't need to drink. There's just the right mix in the juicy lower stalks of these thistles, and they're not too prickly. Marmots are highly social creatures, living in groups of up to 20. They greet one another by rubbing noses, which also lets them identify by the scent whether they're related. Play fighting happens in the best of families. The Gotthard Massif is part of the European watershed. Apart from the Rhine, Reuss and Rhone, it's also the source of the Ticino River, which gives its name to the canton. Southeast of the Massif lie the highest pastures in Ticino. The cattle spend the entire summer outside in these lofty heights. But the number of farmers in the highlands is steadily decreasing. Their farms are simply too expensive to run. As a result, the scrub spreads, encroaching on the meadows and endangering their biodiversity. Cultivated land needs to be properly managed to prevent bushes and trees from taking over. The Dutra Alp is an example of how agriculture and nature conservation can coexist harmoniously. When they mow the grass every 2 years, farmers are assisted by volunteers, helping to retain the precious biodiversity of flora and fauna. The slightly acid soil is an ideal habitat for all kinds of wild orchids. These pristine grasslands are home to a veritable microcosm of insects. The pearl-bordered fritillary is a sun worshipper. If it's too chilly down below, it heads for the heights. And its climbing abilities are quite extraordinary. Up at the top, the butterfly tanks up on sunlight. Once it's warmed up enough, it's off again. But life in the meadow isn't all sunshine and light. The oak spider's web is a cleverly spun death trap. The oak spider is an ambush predator. An alarm thread vibrates as soon as an insect gets trapped in the web. The victim is stunned with a bite. At the same time, the spider injects it with a poison that dissolves organs and tissue, turning it into pulp. The prey is dexterously wrapped up and taken to the spider's storeroom. And when the spider is feeling a bit peckish, the packages are sucked dry. Quite a different danger used to lurk in the Selva Secca, the biggest stone pine forest south of the Alps. Bandits would ambush and rob travelers, so no one would venture into the forest anymore. This was a blessing for the trees. Elsewhere, the Swiss stone pine was felled in its thousands for its valuable wood. But in the Selva Secca, these trees survived and thrived. The stone pine, also known as the Arolla pine, is ideally suited to the rough conditions in the high mountain region. It's practically the most resilient tree on the planet. Left alone, they can live for up to 1,000 years. The Breno River flows through the forest, cutting a deep valley into the rock on its way to the south. The river winds through the enchanted landscape and then passes through the Blenio Valley. There's a southerly feel to the so-called Valley of the Sun. The warm sunshine bathes the valley unobstructed. The area is famous for its chestnut trees. For a long time, they were the most important tree in Ticino. Their fruit was a valuable source of food for animals and humans, and the wood was used for building and fuel. Even wine grows in the Blenio Valley, but the main growing region for fine wines is the south of Ticino. The Sottoceneri is especially renowned for its vineyards. This is the famous sunniest corner of Ticino. It covers the area around Lugano as well as the southern valleys of the Mendrisiotto. Lake Lugano is the region's main attraction. It was formed during the Ice Age by the meeting of two glaciers. When they melted, a typically fork-shaped lake was created. Along the banks, picturesque villages cling to the hillsides. One of these is Monte, formerly one of the most important trading ports between Switzerland and Italy. There's still a lot of trading around the lake. The city of Lugano has become the third largest financial center in Switzerland. Hardly surprising that there's plenty of traffic to and from the city. But just behind the wooded mountains, in the last Alpine foothills, there's no trace of all that hustle and bustle. Here in the southernmost part of Switzerland lies one of its most unknown spots, the Muggio Valley. Gnarled old beech trees form dense forests. For some, however, it isn't the magnificent trees that attract them, but the dead wood. Dead beech trees are an important factor in the survival of one of Europe's rarest beetles, the longhorn beetle. Apart from its conspicuous blue color, the beetle's main feature is its long, hairy feelers. In the males, these antennae are even longer than their entire bodies. They're its most important orientation instruments. These sensitive feeling and scenting tools need very careful looking after. When two males meet, they immediately begin a duel, and only the winner may mate with a female, which is their main preoccupation in life. The difference in size between the genders is sometimes quite striking, though it poses no obstacle to their mating. The female carries the male around as a piggyback passenger. It's a practical way for him to ensure that no one else can steal his bride. The search for a suitable spot to lay her eggs is the female's job. She only deposits the individual eggs in the cracks of dead wood, preferably beech. The life expectancy of the European longhorn beetle is only a few weeks. The larvae, on the other hand, take up to 4 years to develop into fully formed beetles, which makes it even more vital for their survival that their dead wood nursery is left undisturbed. The European longhorn beetle has been around since the Ice Age, but what did the world look like back then, before humans populated the Earth? Some answers can be found in the Breggia Gorge. An archaeological chronicle carved by a river. Over time, the Breggia River has worn through the rock, revealing layers and traces that go back up to 200 million years. Fossils and other findings are embedded in the stone, providing information about the Earth's history and climate change over the millennia. They illustrate quite accurately how this region was formed, at a time when the Alps, as we know them today, didn't exist, but lay thousands of meters below the Earth's crust or on the floor of ancient oceans. In 2001, the first Swiss geopark opened here. Along the 1.5-kilometer path, visitors can take a trip back into the past. Witness to all these days past is the Monte Generoso. During the Ice Age, the mountain was a so-called nunatak, a peak sticking out of the thick ice shield. Like a kind of Noah's Ark, this enabled animals and plants here to survive the Ice Age. Some plants still grow here, like this type of wild peony. It's extremely rare and can only be found in a few places in Switzerland. In May and June, it blooms in full splendor. Far more common and seen all year round is the chamois. There are 350 of them living on Monte Generoso alone. The steep mountainsides pose no problem for them. Their hooves are elastic and have padded soles, giving them sure-footed confidence as they traverse the terrain. Their basic diet consists of grasses and herbs, and they'll go to any lengths or heights to get hold of them. Although usually quite shy, the Monte Generoso chamois are used to humans and so can be seen quite often. There's a bit more luck involved in sighting one very unusual wild creature. A herd of Haflinger run wild lives on Monte Generoso. These horses know no saddle, bridle, or bit. Since the death of their owner, a reclusive mountain farmer, they have wandered unobtrusively around the meadows of Monte Generoso. During the harsh winter of 2008, hunger drove them into the valley. The villagers there were not amused to have wild horses suddenly descend on their fields, gardens, and even cemeteries, eating everything in sight. There were calls for them to be captured or shot, but animal conservationists fought for the wild Haflinger. Since then, the horses are caught and kept indoors in winter and released again in summer. There are 25 animals in the herd today. Haflinger are robust and undemanding as long as they have enough to eat. They also ensure that the fields and meadows are protected from encroaching bush. Although these animals are not truly wild, they're allowed to keep their untamed nature and enjoy their summers of freedom to the limit. True symbols of freedom are the Alpine swift and the common swift. They spend all their lives airborne. They can stay in the air continuously for up to 10 months, sleeping, mating, and catching insects. These gliders use uplift and let themselves be driven by the wind to save energy. They only land to brood and hatch their young. In autumn, they head for Africa, where they spend the winter. Migratory birds need safe stop-off points on their long journeys. Many of those from the north find their way to the Bolle di Magadino, the nature conservation area on Lake Maggiore. Several weeks have passed. The alluvial forests and bogs of the wetland are now resplendent with colour. A reunion with the great crested grebes. Their eggs have hatched. The chicks are known here as pulli. A pair of adults can hatch up to 6 young. Only one of this pair's chicks has survived. Many pulli fall prey to predatory fish or birds. The parents supply a constant stream of small fish. As with the young of all creatures, the appetite of this little grebe is simply insatiable. Getting the feeding skill right is quite tricky. Fish like this are very slippery. Luckily, there's plenty of opportunity to practice. For the first few weeks, the young are carried on their parents' backs. The grebe is a precocial bird and can swim immediately after hatching. The parents feed their offspring fish and feathers. The feathers line their stomachs to protect them from sharp fish bones. The adult birds pull out their own feathers for this purpose. The chicks can dive very early on, too. Despite these little forays into independence, life is much more comfortable with mother. Even though the climb can be quite a challenge. The adult bird's feathers can't protect against every danger, but they do keep the chick nice and warm. The coots have had offspring too. The young birds' heads are a striking red colour. They're also precocial, but stay with their parents for the first few months. The marshes of the Bolle di Magadino are not just ideal breeding grounds for birds, but also for gnats and flies. Paradise for barn swallows. They only come here to hunt. Their nests are usually located close to human beings. In earlier days, they often built their nests in barns, hence their name. They truly are the king of the skies. Here, a few kilometers from lively Lugano, one could fancy oneself in another world. Wild landscapes not far from tourist promenades, rugged mountains next to lovely lakes. This is what makes Ticino what it is, the canton of contrasts.